Okay, good evening, everyone. I didn't know that anyone can start the recording. Thank you, Kanchan, for starting it. Um, Welcome, everyone, to week 2 of cybersecurity management. I hope you had a good first week. I hope that you have got all of the answers regarding the logistics and those organization problem issues with the cost sorted. If you have if still anything unclear, please feel free to ask. Actually, I'm going to spend the first few minutes to see if you have any questions regarding the cost logistics, and I will try to answer as best I can. Feel free to raise a hand if you have any question. Yes, King Halo.
Hi, I'm King. I'd like to ask for the lecture because is there any recording that I can review it? Because there were some issue that I just drop off the second lecture that day, and I would like to watch again.
Um, uh, yes, so the recording is available on the team channels. So if you go to the unit team channel and you go to let me share my screen with you, and then I can show you how it works. Okay, I hope you guys can see my screen, right? Right, so here is the here's a unit team channel, right? And in here there's a few sub channels. If you click on online lecture here, and
Sorry, Anne, I think we can just see your teams at the moment. Can't see the
you cannot see this one. Interesting. Let me see. I let me share a different one then. Thank you.
all good.
Yep. How okay, this one is this one is okay. How about now? Can you see the screen with the like the console of my team channel?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can see the
okay.
channel.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so King's question is where to find the recording, right? So if you go to online lecture here, I believe it should be in there somehow. If you click, yeah,
Hi, sir.
it
I was
should be in there.
hoping
Yep.
this would be put into like one single document instead of us having to scroll through all these comments to find
Yep.
specific lecture. I would like it to be in
mm,
one place. For example, like week 1 lecture would have a link there, week 2 lecture, like so. It's
Yep.
just I've had a similar process in previous units, and it's extremely confusing for cloud students. I don't like that. I was hoping you could have a bit more organized.
Okay, I think I can certainly raise this to Jamal, and I think it's just a problem of getting this link and put it in the Cloudic Insights, right? Yeah, from here.
Thank you
So
very much.
yeah. Okay, so this is where you find it, right? And let me close this one and see. There's another hands going up. Any other questions, guys? I will take note of this first. Let's see. Put the links on. Yep. If you think of any other question, let me know. Let me monitor the chat as well. Yeah, I saw the comment from Karen that it will be better if you guys let me record, press a button the next time. I know it's not much to there should be some setting on team, but I think the way that we set it up is actually let anyone can start the recording. Okay, so next time, please just let me start the recording next time. I thought it would be uploaded to the unit side though. It's not automatically uploaded. I think the unit chair would need to just like copy and paste a link to the site. I don't think there's a strong integration between Teams and Cloud Dickens?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure who was talking about it before because I wasn't in front of my computer, but I agree that like in other units I've done basically after a lecture or a workshop has finished, the recording is then just put into the unit site rather than Teams. And so like when you go to week 1 content, it's either in there or in a separate special online recordings section, so it's really easy to find. But yeah, just on that with the recordings as well, it would be much better if you could record it just so that everyone knows who has the recording and it can be uploaded when it needs to be. Otherwise we end up chasing around figuring out who's recorded it and but,
could I ask in the other unit that you mentioned, are they using Teams or Zoom?
The previous ones I've done were Zoom, I think. I think actually my last unit might have been Teams.
Okay.
But yeah, basically, I think it's just a setting that you can do in Teams as to who has the permission to record it.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's because Zoom requires a separate step that we have to do. So that's why most of the unit chair would prefer to take the link and put it on the side. But because we all use Microsoft, that is why this Teams is some sort of upload to the Dickens cloud, and it's managed by Dickens cloud. So that's why many people forget to just put it to the unit side. Yeah. Hi, King.
I just found it in the conversation. Yeah, just thanks for the guy telling me I can find it throughout the conversation. Before the unit I take in last trimester, they were put in the teams. There were separately. There is a in the channel. There's a file, and then put all the recording, include the lecture, and we use Teams. But
I think you are right. If I go to file, I might see it here.
Yeah, I just maybe just overlook it. Thanks for the reminding. I find it already.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for reminding me too. So I think all the recording is here, Karen. But I would still ask Gemma whether he will actually put the link to unit site as well. Yeah, but look.
I just found it. Yeah, sorry about that.
So team is quite good too, quite organized too. But this we just didn't know. Right. Okay, cool. So has anyone started on assignment 1 yet? You still have time, but
I've started thinking about it.
Right, that's good start. That's always a good start.
Yes, even I started a little.
I started a little too.
Yeah, all good, all good. Yeah, so the earlier you start, so as the earlier you can ask question for anything that you are not clear. Marshall, yes, you want to ask a question?
No, sorry, I accidentally hit the raise hand button, so sorry.
Yeah, sure, that's good. Right, and okay, I think that's cover so far, and then we can move on to this week. And before we begin, let's do a show of hand. How many people here have a background in law? I remember Karen from the last week. Karen has a background in laws, right? But who else here has a background in law? Because we will need your voice in this, because this workshop is heavy in involved with legal practices. Just raise a hand if you have. So Kanchan has as well. Connor has as well. Wow. Okay. Anastasia, Karen. Yeah. Okay, that's good. At least we have a few lawyers in the room. That would help us a lot. Yes. So this brings me to the topic of. Okay. Daniel has watched Better Call Saul. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right? I think that's all we need to know about law is from television. Yeah, from American television too. So that's good. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to be lawyers, but as long as I'm sure you guys have more background on like legal practice than many of us who have no prior experience. I mean, I'm not a lawyer myself, and I'm far from well versed on all the laws, all the prevailing laws, not only on Australia but internationally as well. So, but yeah, so please contribute to the discussion we have today. Really appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I watch Suits too. Yeah, and yeah, I hope like real life law is as glamorous as that show, but unfortunately, it's not. Okay, so this week is about compliance, laws, and ethics. So the first thing that strikes me is that why we need both. I mean, the law is about rules, right? About following the rules. So when you talk about compliance, when you talk about running a company, isn't that enough to comply to the law? Why do we need ethics? And ethics is about doing the right things, right? About doing good. So the first question for you is here. I mean, it's not related to the technical detail at all, but why do you think that we need both in cybersecurity? I mean, and even in IT in general, why isn't the law sufficient? Why isn't it sufficient to just following the law? Why do you need to consider ethics as well? Anastasia, yeah, please.
Hi, thank you. And can you hear me okay?
Yep, yep.
Yes, I think in terms of the cybersecurity laws, and just in terms of technology laws, it's quite a new practice, and we can see from the history of the companies that have been, for instance, like accused of breaches, etc., that the law didn't actually cover enough. And so
Okay.
just because they were unethical, it actually ruined their reputation for not following certain procedures. So that's when we're talking about, civil and criminal penalties, for instance. But also, of course, we have to consider, when we're talking about technology, we have to consider ethical standards about IP, about property, about not stealing anyone's design information, data, etc. And I think when it comes to just, privacy of individuals, the Privacy Act is just being redone now. And the way that it was written before was probably some maybe consider it a bit unethical. And I believe that companies have an obligation towards their consumers and their customers. And whether it was a law or not, yeah, coming back to my previous point, it's the reputation that will be going down if you don't follow ethics.
Okay, thanks. Can you elaborate a bit more on what you said about the law not covering everything? Like, can you give an example that?
Of course. Yes. So, for instance, I can give you an example because I'm a student of criminology. I studied law in another country, which was 10 years ago, and there were barely any cybersecurity laws then.
Okay.
But currently, so for instance, in the US, there is the CCFA code, which is actually covering so much that you could be jailed. So you could have actually criminal penalties for abusing the terms and conditions of a website. The reason for that is that the law is written so broadly, so the government can enforce it in any way that they like. The issue with cybersecurity or any technology is that it develops too quickly for laws to pass. The passing of the laws, the enforcing of the laws, changing of the laws is a very slow process, and the technology is way faster than that. So that's what I was referring to. So, for instance, like we just tabled the Cybersecurity Act in Australia, which is the first standalone act. This is 2024. The Privacy Act, yeah, I think it was done in 1988 or something like that. So that's quite old, and it took us so long to even have a reform about privacy, and so much later than Europe, which had their reform in 2016. And so the government processes that are set around laws and enforcement of laws are just not equipped. They're just not equipped to protect us as citizens from cybercrime. They're not equipped to moderate this world, and so that's where ethics and obligations, I think moral obligations that we have towards each other and towards our consumers would be important to follow as well.
That's great. I think this is a great point that you made, is that the laws is often playing catch up with the technologies, right? That's I think one of the key point. And the technologies that we have today is developed so fast. It takes few years for the law to catch up, and then by then I mean the technologies has already changed. If you take like generative AI as an example, I mean just last year it started like last year, right? And then I mean and it's a change like unrecognizable. So the law is still drafting, and then the technology already changed. So
Yeah, and if you think about AI, so for instance, with the Privacy Act, they have, for instance, put in something for automated decisions. But even after the royal assent, that won't be implemented for another 2 years. So you don't have to comply for another 2 years to that. And all you have to do is just update your privacy policy. But then the Information Commissioner, they're trying to do more things with AI, and it's extremely difficult because you can't even define it at this point. They have so many different opinions, and you also don't want to hinder the progress. And that's another consideration lawmakers and politicians and government bodies have to make, because laws do have, while they're protecting us, they're also inhibiting progress. And so, yeah, I think it's a good and bad.
Yep. Thank you. Marshall, yes, you want to chime in?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just wanting to elaborate on that. I'm sort of see it sort of as law as, I guess, a rule that can be, if it's broken, there's consequences. So it's something that you have to abide by for both businesses and people, as where ethics is more, I see that as a guideline to guide people's personal behavior, so to do the right thing, as to entrust honesty and integrity. So for example, in my role, if I have a system administrative role and I have access to everyone in the company's account details or their paychecks, part of my role, I could legally see their paychecks without any consequence, but ethically I shouldn't be doing that, even though I have access to it.
I guess this is very common among all the IT professional, right? I mean, as you said, ethics is more personal. I think it's personally enforceable, but the law is like enforced by the government or the society. But only individual can, I guess, in that case, in their own ethics. Yes, Natasha.
I just wanted to add to another point that I forgot to add before. And basically, when we talk about ethics in cybersecurity as well, actually a lot of us will be members of certain organizations. For instance, like ISC², you actually have ethics that you have to abide by as a cybersecurity professional. And I think this was created as a part for people to keep their certifications. And so they recognize the gap that legislation has. They recognize the gap that legislation also, as you mentioned before, international legislation doesn't have much of an enforcement mechanism. And so I think those bodies are kind of acting as that, that ethical, that moral guideline. So making it just from personal to an actual guideline that does exist, that we have to abide by to continue operating in the sphere, because we don't actually have things like, as a cybersecurity professional, like you don't have to pass the bar as the lawyer does. You don't have to pass a medical exam. You can just, get a degree or get a LinkedIn course, or get nothing at all and still work in cybersecurity. So that's where ethics come as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you that there are some some guideline for each professions, and I think they call code of conduct. I think somewhere we cover somewhere down here where yeah, some code of conduct for cybersecurity and for some other profession as well, and they more based more on, as you said, the gap in the laws and ethics. So the code of conduct is to guide good behavior. And this is a very good point. Babak, yes?
I guess I'm just wondering if this can be summarized as this, that anything that's been put in law as illegal is quite likely unethical, whereas not everything that's unethical is necessarily illegal. Not sure if that's a fair way to summarize that.
I think it's a very philosophical text on the relationship between law and ethics. And yes, Anastasia, yes.
Oh, I would strongly suggest against it. Laws have been historically wrong, and laws are always made with a certain agenda in mind. They're not an objective rule. And I wouldn't say that many laws are ethical. And I just brought up the point before about CCFA. So as a part of CCFA in America, they've actually, there was this activist who thought that people should have freedom of information for like articles, academic articles. And so he found a way to log into JSTOR, without needing access. And so he downloaded and just basically posted for free all these articles. And JSTOR said, that's fine. We don't care. They just made them available. But the government and the prosecutor went so hard on him that they're giving him a fine of $1 million and charges of 30 years in jail. And trigger warning for suicide in here if anyone doesn't want to listen. But the guy actually ended up unaliving himself. And so how can this be ethical?
Yeah, okay. I think we will come back to the discussion on the relationship between law and ethics a bit later. But Connor, yeah, you raise a hand?
Oh yeah, I was going to say it goes the other way too, where especially from an ethical hacking standpoint, typically in Australia. So before I started in cyber, I did 8 years with police. And for laws to be enforced, you've sort of got to meet 3 criteria for any sort of criminal act. You've got to have the motive, you've got to have the actual ability to do it, and then you've got to actually take the action. So, someone has to be able to do it, they have to actually do it, but then you got to consider motive as well. And that's where in cyber, it's a bit of a gray area for us going forward, because, look at ethical hackers. So long as you follow responsible disclosure, it can be very hard to be fined or charged for hacking even a network that you haven't been approved to hack, because your motive is not there. If your motive is to not be malicious, but to, and this is where the ethics sort of ties into it, ethically you're good, legally you're bad. But, certainly this is not legal advice, but there's plenty of cases where there's one couple of years ago where they hacked Donald Trump's Twitter account multiple times, and he publicized it. The hacker who did it, he contacted the appropriate people, he disclosed it, told them how he did it, how they could fix it, and they tried to take him to court. They tried to charge him, but because the motive was sound, because he wasn't doing anything malicious, ethically he was in the right, he was protected. And that's something where, it goes the other way as well. Laws aren't keeping up, but also even when there are laws that prevent you from doing something, your motive and the ethics behind why you're doing it can also save you.
It depends how the law is written. Yeah.
Okay, I think we all agree that ethics is something more than the law, right? I think something that something in ethics that the law cannot capture. I mean, if I give the law benefit of the doubt and say that it is designed to enforce good behavior for everyone, then I think there's still some gap there that doesn't cover all the what we call good behavior. And yeah, so that's why when you are a cybersecurity professional, it's not just sufficient. It's not sufficient just to follow the law. I think follow the law would give you the title of a law-abiding citizen. But if you're practicing ethic as well, then you'll be a good citizen too. That's what I gather from this discussion. But of course, this is very subtle. Is no single definition of what is considered as good, right? Because different society have a different definition of good. So it's yeah. So these questions of what is a relationship between laws and ethic, which is better, is I think is far from settled. Anyone else want to add something to the discussion? Anything that you see in the work experience can help illustrate the gap between the law and ethics, please feel free to share with us. Right. Yes, please. Yes, understand.
Well, it's not probably from my work experience because I hope nobody in my work does that. But for instance, doxing just became illegal in the new Privacy Act. But I don't think anyone should have been going around doxing people beforehand. Same thing comes for cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is not defined really well in the law. It's really hard to prove. It's just one of those things where you can become perpetrator very easily for cyberbullying just by sharing the information forward, by retweeting, by by liking even. And so it doesn't mean that you should be doing this just because the law isn't catching up. Same thing coming up with AI. We've mentioned that before. AI debates are notorious for saying things like we need to be giving the credits to the artists, that the work has been created from their art and their data has been used illegally. And also the people's faces were used to train this database and voices without their consent. And so I think it poses some questions for us as consumers of whether we should be creating AI art, should we be creating AI music, knowing that it's been unethically sourced from these people, even though it is not illegal yet, and it will take some time for that to become law.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, this technology that can train from existing data and create something out of it has been around for a long time. It's just because lately it's getting so good at it that people started to notice. So I think the law has seen it before, but they're playing catch up now, and it's pretty hard. I think pretty hard for them because the technology is changing so fast. Okay. All right, so I think let's get back to our content of this week. Okay, so cybersecurity laws is a criminal laws. It's just said in Australia there's a Cybercrime Act starting 2001, and it's just say I think the main message is that it's illegal to access a system without permission, right? So all the hacking, all the unauthorized access is considered a crime. I think there's many others as well, but I think that is one of the main key takeaway, right? So just don't access a system without permission. And then we have civil laws, which focus on issues regarding individual like privacy and consumer protections. And another type of laws is regulatories. So it's specific to application domains, like in payment industry, there's this standard, payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS. And in the EU, there's a EU Network Information Security Directive. I remember Jamal posting something similar related to this in the team chat just a few days ago. Yeah, so different industries have different regulatories, and they are usually the implementations of the law specific to the domains, right? So they are like specific implementation of the law. I think at the core of the law is a concept of negligence. Okay, I think there's many other core concept as well, but from cybersecurity laws, from my limited understanding of like the domain of the laws, there's one core concept called negligence, and it's about doing the job and doing a good job, right? So due care is about taking reasonable steps. Example, like you encrypt the sensitive data to protect an organization's system. And a very related term is due diligence, is that you have to show ongoing effort to identify, assess, and mitigate cybersecurity risk. Okay, so my interpretation of the difference between due diligence and due care is due diligence is about doing the job, right? And due care is about somehow going beyond the job description and do the right thing. But I'm open for discussion here. What is our, I mean, how would you distinguish between these two terms? I mean, especially any input from like the people with the law background regarding these two terms would be really appreciated. So what is the difference between due diligence and due care? We have a good example here, but I mean, I'd like to hear some other voices as well. Karen, yes.
So my understanding is due diligence is an ongoing care, I guess, to make sure that the necessary efforts are taken to basically continuously assess and mitigate risks and make sure that due care is being taken in ongoing activities, whereas due care is more specific to a particular situation or event or activity.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that due diligence is more on the process and due care is more on the steps, the first big step on that process?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, yeah. Any other interpretation of these terms, these two terms? Yes, Anastasia.
I would just add that for me, like due diligence also reads about making all of the steps necessary. So it's like not cutting corners. And I think like negligence can be defined in there. It's like when they can identify that you could have done something and you were aware of something, but you didn't follow that properly. And so you didn't do it diligently enough. So that's due diligence, but that's just how I read it. And the due care is like you have the responsibility. You are the liable person or entity.
I see. Okay. It's still quite hard for me to see the difference in the example, though. I mean, so you talk about, so are they not responsibility? It's not in the job description of the employee. I mean, both of them. How would you distinguish them? I mean, can someone be convicted of lack of due care, but not lack of due diligence?
Yeah,
And the
so
other way around? Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Like for due care, for instance, if someone is drowning, right, and you have the due care to offer them assistance as a human being, also legally or something like that. But how can you do it diligently, like if you don't know how to do it? And so, like in the cybersecurity space, for instance, you've been aware that your domain is used for, like your domain is being spoofed and is being used for employment scams. So like maybe like someone can argue that you have the due care to inform the person that is being scammed, but then you can't be like really blamed for due diligence if you don't do that. But then due diligence is like if you have created processes or something like that, and the people are not following those processes, and you as a manager are aware of that, then you haven't really done your diligence.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's come back to the process with this like steps, specific action, differences that Karen was referring to. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, King Hayla. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on.
Hi. For me, I just thinking, is it like I get a simple example. The due diligence mean, as we said in last workshop, is changing the password. There's a regulation for the company's computer. You have to change the login password, the password to log in for 6 months or 3 months, and have certain combination on the password. That is due diligence. That is to mitigate the risk. And the due care is how you keep the password. Or for example, we often see like that. We just set a very difficult password, but some careless or some staff just wrote the password on the memo pad and put it on the table. That is not a good example of due care. Is it like this? I'm not pretty sure. To sum up, is the due diligence is the the policy or the activity to mitigate the risk, and the due care is the attitude, how you do it.
I think it's a very interesting take on this. Yeah, I mean, I cannot say for sure whether this is a how correct this is, but I think the example of the process of the policy of password is a good example of due diligence. So you come up with the whole process of policy, right? And the due care is about I think not about keeping the password, it's about enacting those policies, right? So you have the policy, but if you don't enact on it, if you don't actually implement it, then
Yeah.
it's not due. It's not
Yeah,
due
due
care.
care has been how you take steps to crop with the due diligence policy.
I think that would be a good example. Yeah.
Yeah.
My point of view. Okay. I think there's in the class lecture there's a discussion here with two example. I think is illustrate the subtle difference between these two terms quite well. Okay, so cybercrime laws. There's different country might have a different laws. Like for example, in Australia, there's a Cybercrime Act 2001. In South Africa, there's a similar thing in 2020. I think they are different, but I think the main common thread must be that you are not allowed to access a system without permission. Okay, so that is a law that is internationally agreed on. And privacy law, there's a lot of talk on this because of like the explosion of personal data these days. There's a lot of them in Australia. There's a Privacy Act, 1988. I'm not sure whether this is the latest one or not. Has anyone here have a good idea whether this is the latest regulation in terms of privacy we have in Australia? Connor, yeah.
Yeah, so that Privacy Act is pretty much the most recent, but you've got to be aware that depending on what state you're in as well, the privacy laws change. So, for example, down here where I am in Tasmania, the Privacy Act doesn't apply. Instead, there is a Tasmanian legislation that supersedes the federal legislation because the federal legislation cannot encroach on the state legislation. So when it comes to privacy laws, and the Privacy Act, the federal one, is a good baseline. It's a good foundation to refer back to, and it's certainly worth having a good understanding of. But you also need to consider whether or not the state that you're in or where the business is operating has its own Privacy Act or privacy laws or legislation that also apply, and they may supersede the Federal Privacy Act.
I see. Yeah.
Trust me, it's something that I absolutely hate it. I just wish it was so much easier for the whole country to abide by one act. But
I see.
That's the difference in legislation between federal and state.
Okay. Anastasia, with the hands up.
Oh yes, as I've mentioned before, there is a new addition to the new Privacy 2024 is about to be passed soon. So it's probably going to be this year. I would strongly suggest to familiarize yourself with the changes that have been made. So pretty much since 2019, there has been a reform happening in Australia, the privacy reform. They came out with quite a lot of suggestions of how to improve the very ancient 1988 Act. And then the government took another year to deliberate on all of the findings. They came out with 89 findings that they think they're going to implement in law. There are going to be two tranches of this law. So this was just the first tranche. And to be quite honest, people thought it would go a bit further. So people thought that they would implement something called the right to be forgotten. It was probably something people talked a lot about, thank you, Connor, a lot in the media. And basically a person similar to GDPR, which is implemented there, people could just go to an organization and ask the organization to delete all of their data If anyone here ever worked in data, they would know how hard it is to do. Also, what they did implement though was a Schedule 2. So essentially, a person can now go and this is a this is a tort schedule essentially. So the person can demand that the company, if they can prove that the company negligently has damaged their has done something to their privacy rights, that they can get compensation. And the burden for proof is very low. So you don't have to actually show that you've lost any money. You don't have to show that there was any harm done to you. All you need to show is that the company acted negligently in regards to your personal information. And as I said before, if you were listening, doxing is going to be illegal. So that's the amendment that it's doing to the Criminal Act, but it's directed by the Privacy Act regulations. And as I said before as well, the automated decisions coming out, which is referring to AI. And what it's also doing, it's giving more powers to the Office of Information Commissioner. It's given more powers to investigate, to collect evidence, and also to enforce compliance with certain findings that they may have. And another thing is other countries. So the minister will able to declare certain countries as safe to share information with, which we currently have. Probably the only way we have it is Five Eyes in terms of defense, which could actually streamline a lot of processes. So yeah, looking forward to see the future and what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this and any changes to the privacy regulation is good for the customer, good for individual. But I think there will be a lot of pushback from enterprises, looking from the example of GDPR. I think it's very hard to implement, as you mentioned. And
yeah, GDPR will be very hard, but this change did not go as hard as GDPR. It's actually quite mild compared to that. Depends on which industry you work in, of course.
Okay, and you mentioned the word doxing. What is that again?
Doxing is yes.
Can you spell that out?
So there are two ways of spelling it. That's okay. So there are two ways of spelling it. You can spell it DOX or DOXXING. And essentially, this is the process of maliciously releasing a person's information online so other people can attack them, so their private information. So the reason why the government actually passed it, and that's what they said they did anyway, is to help their fight for gender violence, to protect from gender violence, because cybercrime is not just countries fighting each other, it's actually happening every day. And a lot of partners use in technology to get back at their partners, and they would post their information online, and then you have to go and change all of your details. It's actually very harmful. I personally, because I'm a big cybercrime research enthusiast, I wish they went further, but it's a good step. It's a good step forward. So now it will be illegal.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I think I didn't know this word before, but yeah, now I'm caught up. But, thanks. Okay, so any other comments on the Privacy Act? I think it's good. It's good that we have one in the horizon soon, and I think in a way that would be try to be compatible with the general data protection regulations, GDPR, which is very popular, and I think one of the most recent privacy regulation in the world. And it's very interesting to look at it from the technical perspective as well, because I'm a technical person myself, and look at like what are the technologies is that can do to be compliant with GDPR is very interesting. It's just like the cost can be quite high. So the challenge now become how you can comply with this law without incurring too much cost. And yeah, this is a technical challenge in itself, and it's quite interesting. It have a lot of traction in research community too. Okay, so we're just about to talk about the notifiable data breach, and I think this applies. Yeah, so this details is applicable to the Privacy Act in 1988, and where it say that the notification time when you when you are aware of a breach is 30 days. I believe this is a bit long, right? And does anyone know how many days that GDPR ask you to notify? I think within 72 days, or
72
even
hours.
less. 72 hours, 72 hours, yes. So 3 days. So I think this windows of 30 days is very large. And you can be fined up to 2.1 million for non-compliance. Okay, and you can, when you finding a notification, when you notify the breach, it's not just like they see one sentence and say, oh, I have a breach, but you have to show description of the breach, what happened, and some preliminary post-mortem analysis of what happened, and the plan for how to mitigate them as well. Okay, so that is about the law. Now let's talk about ethics, and we have a long discussion at the beginning about cybersecurity ethics, and I think it's good to discuss it again on how do we evaluate even if a decision is ethical or not. And there's a few principles, a few lenses that you can use to evaluate that decision. You can look at it from the privacy perspective, like whether that decision will protect the privacy of the individual or not. If you can look at it from fairness perspective, whether it's fair to everyone, whether it's transparent, or whether it's it has accountability. It means whether it holds someone accountable for their decision or not. Right? So what we haven't discussed is ethical theories. I think, yeah, this is really going back to the real fundamental here. I think ethics is rooted in philosophy, right? There's a ethics like ethics philosophy, and there's a many different frameworks and many different approach on ethics, and there are of these 5 here. I think the two probably most important one is what we call consequential ethics, or utilitarianism ethics, where it's focused on maximizing the overall happiness or minimizing harm. And my understanding about it is about maximizing the goodness, like by counting, by using math, right? By weighing the pro and the con, and to select the one would have the maximum amount of good in it. And the opposite view, I think, I'm not sure whether it's completely opposite or not, but it is called deontological, which is take the individual point perspective, where everyone, every individual is respected. It has a right, and that right has to be respected equally. So there's no counting here, and everyone had to be treated equally, and their right had to be respected. And this, I just remember a very good way to think about this different ethical theories is a trolley problem. And in cybersecurity, there's very recently, just last year, there's this research paper. It's called Ethical Framework and Computer Security Trolley Problem. So this is about casting the classical trolley problem to cybersecurity. And this is the first academic work that talk about this, right? So even the cybersecurity professional, we sort of aware about the gap between ethics and the law, and keep talking about doing the good things. But there hasn't been, I mean, before this paper, there hasn't been any like academic work that really look at the ethical foundation of cybersecurity. And this is very good, good paper to read. I strongly recommend it. And the slides is here. I think it's publicly available. I can just post it here. So if you have time, and take a look at it. Okay. So it it discussed cybersecurity, and it discussed a thought experiment in cybersecurity, and it's similar to the trolley problem, right? So the trolley problem is, I think I just use Wikipedia for this. Okay, so the trolley problem is a thought experiment about ethics, right? So you have the trolley here, the freewheeling. The brake's been cut for some reason, and without any interference, then it would run over 5 people. But there's a one conductor here that can flick the switch and get it to go to on another path and run over just one person, right? So this is a trolley problem. This is a dilemma. There's no absolutely right or wrong answer to this, but it's illustrate how different framework, different people following different ethical framework would arrive at different decision. Okay, and this paper here give a thought example. It's very similar to the trolley problem, where someone finds the vulnerabilities and the decision is to whether to disclose it or not, right? So in fact, this will be the focus of our workshop today. I will talk about it later, but yeah, so problem here is if you disclose, you might harm an X number of people. If you not disclose, you might harm a Y number of people, right? So what decision here? What choice here you will make? Okay, and this is a dilemma because there's no right answer here. Okay, every right answer has some risk, has something wrong in it. Okay, so different people will have a different choice, and that is why it's very interesting to discuss scenario like this, right? And it's only a thought experiment. We are so lucky that we don't have to actually make this decision in practice. Okay, so any other question here before we move on to the use case of this workshop, and we can just like put whatever concept we learn into practice. Okay. Yes, Connor.
Yeah, just a question regarding the ethics. So
yeah,
this just relates to assignment 1. Are we meant to? So we've got those in that table there. You've got 5 different, I guess you know, theories of ethics that we could apply.
Yeah.
In our assignments, should we be exploring multiple theories, or should we pick one? Or
I think you can apply multiple theories, yeah, because these theories are not comprehensive. Yeah, you can pick some part from different theories, of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Anastasia say that there's a series called The Good Place, and they have an episode on the trolley problem. Yeah, I remember watching that. I don't remember how they solve this problem at all. Simba,
They
yes?
don't solve it. It's been used to torture people.
Okay. Yeah, they use it to torture people. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
cheating. Yeah.
Yes, Simba.
Hey, On. Just a quick question. Like, how many references should we cite for assignment 1?
Is there a requirement on the assignment sheet? I don't remember exactly, but it's
I think the assignment sheet says minimum 3.
Yeah, so if you say minimum 3, then there's at least 3.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so in this workshop, we will apply the knowledge regarding cybersecurity and privacy law and ethical principle to real world scenarios. I mean, close to real world scenarios. This is like an imagined scenarios. We try to make it as closer to real world as we can. And the goal here is just for you to reflect on this concept, right? To build critical thinking and understanding of the intersection between legal obligation, ethical standard, and management. Okay. As we've already seen, there's a lot of things going on in the legal space, and also in the ethical space as well. And different people will have to make a different decision based on their ethical framework. So the case study that we have with us is an AI-based products company. Rushy is an AI-based product employed by a financial institution to analyze high-value transaction for hundreds of clients. Okay, and Rushy used a company-wide way to develop its software, and this software company recently identified a critical vulnerability in the application. But even though they found the vulnerability, they due to technical challenges and resource constraint, they determined that the vulnerability would be difficult to be discovered by the attackers or to be exploited. So as a result, they decided not to disclose the vulnerability to its client, because they believe the risk to be minimal. And you have been hired as a security consultant to conduct an audit on Huawei, and you discover this decision to withhold the disclosure of the vulnerabilities. Okay, so this is the setting. This is the story, the backstory. The first task asks you this question. Basically, this first task asks whether this company is breaking the law or not. Okay? And you can use any laws for reference. You can use a Cybercrime Act 2001 as a reference and see whether what this Huawei company is doing is breaking the law. Not, yeah. And in answering this question, can you please think about the potential legal and financial ramification for this company if by delaying the response to that vulnerability, it leads to a data breach. Okay. So even though the company think that the risk is minimal, but let's think about what would happen if the bad thing actually happened, the data breach actually happened. Okay. This is task 1. And task 2 is to look at these scenarios from the data privacy point of view and think how is the company decision to withhold information about the vulnerabilities aligns with the GDPR core principle. Okay, and one interesting question here is why do you think that Huawei company, this company, is accountable for security of its software, even though it doesn't directly handle personal data? Okay, so even when the companies say that I'm not touching the personal data, so why am I subject to GDPR? Okay, but this is an interesting question to ask. And the task 3, I think this is the most interesting one, is whether you think the decision is ethical or not. And if it were you, would you do anything differently? And based on what ethical framework would you base that decision on? Right? So I think this is very open-ended questions, and the scenario is quite is quite broad as well. I think it's give a lot of room for interpretation. For example, it doesn't define what AI-based product it is. So different AI-based product may have a different, may result in different answer to this task. Okay, and depends on what vulnerability is found. So answer may be different too. Okay, right. So you have a lot of room to maneuver here, and I think I would give you guys 20 minutes, 25 minutes to think about this question, and then we have a big discussion on all of these tasks. Okay. And there's one question: is assumed to be a SaaS based product? Yeah, it does not say that it's not, right? So you can make that assumption too. Yeah, as you can use more detail to get it more specific, to make it more specific. Yeah, and make the argument more compelling. Okay. Okay, so I think let's work on this for 25 minutes, and let's discuss around 5 to 8. Okay. Let me mute myself. But if you have any question during this time, then please feel free to speak up or type it in the chat. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt our deep thought, but let's open up let's open up the floor for our discussion. Right? I think it'd be interesting to start with task 3 first. Let's start from ethics angle, right? So in this task, you will explore the ethical dilemmas raised by the company's decision to delay the disclosure. Okay, so let's discuss why do you think this is an ethical dilemma first. So a dilemma implies that there's no good, I mean, both decision of disclosing or not disclosing are, I mean, they both have some good thing and bad things, right? But what are they in like specifically? Why do you think it's an ethical dilemma? Yes, Karen. Yeah.
I think Joshua was first.
Yeah.
If
Sorry,
he wants
Joshua.
to go.
I didn't see the hand first.
It's all right, I'll
Joshua,
take the
yes,
next one.
please. Yes. We can't seem to hear you. I think you unmute, but we can't seem to hear you. Would you like to try again, Joshua?
I think he might have gone.
Okay. So
but
yeah.
I'll do it, I guess.
Yep.
So the dilemma is that although the security team identified a vulnerability, which they did admit could have a serious impact, they decided they also were facing constraints of resource and technical issues or technical challenges. So it seems like the dilemma was whether they worked through those, and which would have caused a lot more work and potential cost and slowed down everything, by notifying their customers of the security risk, or simply get on with work and continue without notifying the customers.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a good take. So on one hand they have resource constraint, and the other hand they have the disclosing, right? But do you think that disclosing it is would take a lot of resources? This one is not about fixing it, right? It's about delaying the disclosure.
Yeah, I guess that it's not even necessarily the work and resources with that, but potentially reputation and the bringing to light the fact that there is this vulnerability. The backlash from that could potentially cause a lot of work, and I guess other factors like PR management and managing that whole process.
Yeah.
Which could also end up, there could be quite a cost to it as well.
Yeah, that's true. I think that I agree with. I mean, if they disclose it, they may risk loss in terms of reputations and other things as well. So yeah, in that sense, they are in the dilemma there. Babak, yes. Babak, sorry, Babak. Yeah. Babak, I think your hand is up. Can you unmute yourself? I think you on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
My bad. Yep. I think personally, I think there is no ethical dilemma. It's quite straightforward, because the case is saying they have identified a critical vulnerability in a core component used for essential customer app. These are very key words. It's just massive negligence on their part if they decide to not notify. I mean, if the worry is image, I think notifying will establish trust. Yes, it can piss off some customers, but at least they've been warned. The ramifications from a breach are significantly worse, especially if it's, again, the case says that, a consultant discovered the decision to withhold this information. That is significantly more damaging than just being proactive and revealing to customers and taking those measures to protect against, and probably, sort of work on fixing the vulnerability, or at least give the customers an option to figure out, give them time. Maybe they can figure out something on their own while this vulnerability is being patched, for instance.
Okay. I think that's a good point. I think you value the criticalness of this vulnerabilities more than anything else, right? And okay, I think there's another hand that goes up. Maybe I would just I think Dion, you have your hands up earlier. Would you like to comment or discuss?
Sorry, that was by accident.
Oh, okay. Right. So going back to Babak's point, I think I agree that if this is a very critical, right, and it affects the core where the core functionality of the of the software, then it's quite bad. It's quite bad. But there's another sentence right after this that say that the team has determined that the vulnerability would be difficult for malicious attacker to discover or exploit, and as a result, they believe this the risk is minimal. Would that change your opinion at all, Babak? That they have assessed it and they say that okay, it's critical if exploited, right?
I mean, that's their opinion, and that just shows negligence in my opinion. There's no argument about this. I think it's very black and white. This is very clear. It's negligence.
Okay, yeah. I think I agree somewhat to the I think what is this called, the perspective that is negligent on their part. But let's hear from others. I think King Halo, you want to say something?
Hi. For me, from my point of view, I think there's not a reason on the resources constraint or technical challenge, but as the beginning is said that the way is employed by the financial institutes, and the agreement between these two companies is to perform the software development, even though it is no matter it is critical or non-critical, it's easily to discover or not easy to discover. The Wavewire have the responsibility to report all the issues, all the voluntaries they discover, report to the financial institutes, and the software company seems not organization to decide to disclose this vulnerability or not. The responsibility is to develop it and then report all the issues.
Okay.
Even though it's just a small problem, it's not ethical, not the right person to make a decision.
Okay. Right. Yes. Okay. I think that is a valid point too. I think you hold very high standard, ethical standard on the software development company, right? And that's what we all want. But I mean, it must be said that if such things are not said in the agreement, in the contract, the contract must say that if you discover anything, you must disclose to me. If it's not said that, and then it's not legally binding, and in that sense, the company only held by their own ethical standard, right? So it's up to them if they're not bound by the contract to disclose, I guess. Daniel, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I had similar thoughts to Babak and King. Especially if they're saying it's hard to discover and exploit, then where's the harm in at least letting your customers know that hey, there's this vulnerability. It's like they've just held it back to save themselves.
Okay.
They shouldn't be able to make the decision on behalf of their customers.
Yeah, I think that is another fair point too. When you say that it's difficult to discover or exploit, then yeah, I think I think that there are some harm on disclosing it to the client because the client might react not as they want. I mean, their client might react differently than what they expected, right? But yeah, that is a valid point. Marshall?
Yeah, the line about the difficulty for malicious actors to discover or exploit that then led them to believe that the risk would be minimal. I think that's a fault in their risk assessment. That line shows the likeliness. So the likeliness might be low because it's difficult, but the impact would still be very high. So I think that's a fault in their risk assessment.
Okay. Yep. Because this description does not say anything about how good they are at risk assessment. So I think you can make that that claim, make that assumption too. Yeah. On well.
Yeah, I just like to add that due to the nature of the business, right, of the organizations that this company is developing software for, you're looking at financial institutions, there's always high risk and there has to be really tight security, right? So transparency, accountability, and fairness will have to be considered in this case. Ethically, they have to be transparent and accountable at corporate level.
How about fairness? How would you assess the fairness of their decision here?
Yeah, I mean the software company has got obligations to to safeguard their software, right? And it's only fair that they know of any vulnerability that exists.
I think fairness here is in terms of like to people, right? Whether it's fair to you and to me as well, like to everyone. But I mean, when it comes to fairness, you must consider like the perspective of the employee and the perspective of the of the clients as well, right? Is this fair to the employees and their like relatives, or is this fair to the clients? I mean, this is very difficult.
And the customers,
question.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Connor.
Hey, yeah. So something that we need to consider here too regarding disclosure. So 0 days and stuff like that are a big issue, absolutely. But what you'll find is at the moment that a vulnerability is disclosed and becomes part of the public record, you've typically got a ticking time bomb there in how long until a proof of concept is then released.
Yep.
Sometimes it's better to, keep things under wraps for a little bit rather than publicly disclose. Because while public disclosure can offer, it's good for your reputation and everything like that, you got to remember, like it's one of those. It's like Pandora's box. You open it up, you put it out there. You got no way of controlling, because you may think all of your customers are perfectly safe, but you've got no idea if they're compromised. You may even be sharing this information with them as a privilege, sharing it through secure channels. But you could be sharing it with an account that's already got an insider threat, and now they know about your vulnerability. And they're going to start fighting tooth and nail to try and figure out how to leverage that vulnerability to exploit that software.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, and it really does. There's a lot of things to weigh up there.
Yeah, I would imagine the software development team took that into account. I mean, the consideration of like publicly disclosing the vulnerability and inviting hackers all over the world to try to exploit it. So this is a high risk decision too. I mean, if this is what they try to consider. I mean, just want to add to that in practice, there's a sort of like a procedure for responsible disclosure where once you find the vulnerability, you would notify the vendors and allow them about 90 days to deal with it. And after 90 days, and you would like go public with all vulnerabilities. Yeah. So that will give a bit of time to the vendor to fix it as well. Why try to hide the vulnerability for as long as you can. Andres, yeah. What's your take on this?
Well, I definitely agree that this should be disclosed as soon as it has been discovered. Not only because it can be rediscovered again, but because even the team itself, the people who are in the team, know about this exploit, and there's no guarantee all of them are decent, and none of them will go and sell it somewhere or exploit it himself, for example. So as soon as especially if as it says, it's critical vulnerability, as soon as this is discovered, it must be mitigated straight away. It cannot be left on the merit that it's hard to exploit. Hard doesn't mean impossible. And also, as a consumer, if I would be like on other side of this deal, I would definitely like the company providing me service to disclose me all these problems straight away as soon as they're known. I don't want to be, would not want to be in a position when I am like at their mercy. That's kind of.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. I think you are in line with Babak's way, I think. Babak, yeah, you want to add more to the discussion?
I think I mean, you semi-answered my question, and it's also, I have a question back on that. Given that this is discovered, I guess it's not a 0 day anymore. It's been discovered, and in this case scenario that the consultant has found out that the vulnerability exists and they haven't disclosed. So it's no longer a 0 day, it's known. It's just a matter of disclosing to customers, which, I mean, the case also says that they decided not to inform clients. Now, what I want to understand is when it comes to disclosure, is it, I guess it doesn't make sense to publicly disclose, but is revealing to clients considered public? Like, I assume there is only some privileged audience at the customers who will be informed, those who will be responsible for mitigating that risk on their end, and understand that the vendor will be working on a fix. Is that correct? I don't think it means that, they just mass publicize that, hey, we have this vulnerability, and then like Connor said, it's just going to invite attacks. So I don't know, and like I just don't understand.
I think you are right. When I say disclosure, it's more toward the vendors, yeah, and then after that you can publish this in some vulnerability database like the CVEs and got a CV numbers. But first you have to disclose to the vendors first, and the vendor is the product owners. And in our case, I think this company, Rashi, is a product owner, is the one that owns this product, right? It's like, I mean, they are a client of this company, but this client is just actually running a software that provides service to like some end users. And I think when we say disclosing here, I think you can interpret it as disclosing to Rashi, not to the end user. I think the end user might not know much about it, and they just go into panic mode most of the time. But the company, they might do something more interesting. Yeah.
All right. I guess I misunderstood. I thought Rashi is the product name of
Rashi
Huawei's.
Rashi is a
is an AI-based product employed by and the software development. So the company is, it's like saying Microsoft is Huawei and Rashi is Azure. Something, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. Then I think it's my mistake. I thought Rashi is a company that sell this AI-based product, but so Rashi is the name of the software. And the company behind it is Huawei. Then in this sense, the immediate client would be the financial institution. Yes, is the one that is affected by it.
Okay.
Yeah. King, hello.
Yeah, I would like to raise out the point that I think the difference when the previous talking about the disclosure, is it to the client, to the software owner, or to the public? The main point is this is a financial institute's software that provides to the financial institute's clients. I'm not pretty sure the exact regulations in Australia, but in my hometown there should be, or even though in Australia there should be the regulations that to determine the date or how the effect how it affected on it something like voluntaries and the data breach that will affect treat it as an operation incidents. Yeah, because it should be very. It is not. For example, like when you talking about the data branch in some software companies like Mentor, like Microsoft, even though it is not a financial institute. When they disclose it to the public or disclose it to their clients or users, it depends on the company's decision or how they care the reputation. But for financial institute, it's totally not. It is climb. It is regulations that are very strict to set. I can't pretty sure maybe even though 24 hours or even though 72 hours, you must disclose to the public or report to the certain regulations to organization.
Yeah.
So the main point is that it is a financial institute. So we're talking about I take a very strict line about the responsibility because it is a financial institute and everything is under regulations.
Yeah, I believe in finance there's some regulation. I mean they operate under very tight regulation, but I'm not sure whether there's a lot of regulation about the technologies used in finance. I'm not very well versed on that, but
Yeah,
anyone
but
else?
because even though whatever every device, every technology, every software or every service the financial institute is using, they are responsible it as its operational assets. And it seems to be if there is any problem, anything that is affecting the public, it will be treated as the operation incidents of a financial institute and needs to be reported to the regulatory department.
Yeah, I think there's a message in the chat from Joshua's mentioning Security of Critical Infrastructure Act, and I believe that financial institution is under this purview, right? Joshua, you want to take the turn eventually? I mean, finally.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, sorry, my laptop was closed.
Okay.
Yeah, the Financial Services falls under the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act. So I haven't had a chance to read. I just picked up bits and pieces, but I would say the consultant would have to report to Huawei, and Huawei also have an obligation under the Act as well to report to their vendors.
I see. Yeah. So
but the fact that they, like, I think a few people mentioned the risk assessment as well. It's not so much whether they can perform risk assessments or not, but you can't prove a negative. So if it can happen, it will happen.
Yeah. I think they can only give a probabilities. I mean, like the likelihood of that happen. Right?
Yeah. So you're giving yourself a level of confidence.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay. So what is your take on this? I mean, do you think that they should disclose? Or it looks like you're leaning toward disclosing.
From what I've read, I think they have to disclose.
They have to. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Karen?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think a really big problem in this case study is that the security team actually has the authority to perform these risk assessments rather than it being escalated to a more senior executive decision maker. Because basically, and it shows in the actual case, I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but in the original case description, although they identify that there's a serious vulnerability or a critical vulnerability, they then basically justify the not disclosing due to the technical challenges and resource constraints, and they're coming from a very, I guess, siloed position of working in that security team, rather than having the capacity to consider all of the other external factors and possible like regulations and laws and other things that they need to follow. So the fact within the company that this team is able to actually perform that risk assessment from a very siloed and probably uninformed basis, given that given that they've said that, you know, given the outcome of that assessment, based on the information we have, it's probably that's probably a pretty big factor in why this hasn't actually had a better result or better outcome.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting point that you pick up that no one has picked up on this. Like, yeah, so the risk here seems to be carried out purely from the technical perspective, right? But yeah, I think there's a risk from external factor as well. So it has not been considering here. It has been not been considered here, and it's very interesting point. Thank you, Anastasia. Yeah.
Oh, I thought Karen was. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I have a big problem with. So we mentioned the SOCI Act, and they wouldn't have to disclose just to the you know, to the product, sorry, to the customer. I think they would have to actually disclose it to the information commissioner and to the government. So they would have basically they didn't do that because they decided that it wasn't significantly harmful. And I think the real issue here is the definition of the law of what is a notifiable breach. And I think Privacy Act is kind of addressing this a little bit, and they're actually saying that, you know, it's instead of being, you know, both serious and also can cause serious harm or something of the sort, now they're combining them together. And so serious is something that's causing significant harm. Again, they're the ones deciding that. So it's a bit, yeah, there is no segregation of duties here, as the person before me mentioned. Sorry, that was a very good point. Yeah, they're the ones that discovered it. They're also the ones that decided on it. So there is no segregation of duties, which is another important cybersecurity principle. And another thing I wanted to mention is that when the companies don't want to disclose this information, and you will find that a lot of them don't. So before Optus, there were so many breaches that were not notified because of that little rule of what is harmful and what isn't. And I think there is a question that refers to that, even if they don't handle private data or whatever, who defines what private data is? Like, we are talking about financial institutions that handle large transactions. I have no idea how they decided it wouldn't be harmful, but okay, again, their own opinion, which is not something that they should have done in the first place. So the Cybersecurity Act, which is the 2024 one, which has been tabled last month, and hopefully it will pass soon in the Parliament, introduced the Cyber Incident Review Board. So the point of the Cyber Incident Review Board is to have fault-free notifiable breach disclosure. And when you have a fault-free one, it basically, like, it takes away that liability from you. It actually tries to encourage companies to disclose vulnerabilities to them so we can mitigate them. And it's incredibly important in critical infrastructure, because a lot of these financial institutions, you know, telecommunications, especially when it comes to operational technology, have really poor legacy systems. A lot of them have vulnerabilities that can't be patched at all, but especially if something like that can cause harm, we would like them to come forward as much as possible, so they wouldn't be harmed. And so I think we cannot forget the fact that we have a system where Huawei operates, and some of the decisions that these people have made are because of how our frameworks and laws are built. So yeah, they also have a role to play here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think one of the factor that they use to not disclose that there's no law that would I think they're not breaking the law here by not disclosing. I mean, when this vulnerability is not exploited, right? If it's kept hidden, then I'm not sure whether there's a law that can convict them on this action. I think there's only their ethical framework that they are in violation of. But I think the law is not very specific for these scenarios. Yes, Onwell, you want to discuss?
Yeah, just to add to that, you are right. I mean, we've gone a little bit far in terms of law and legislative requirements, probably, which are not really highlighted in this case. But just going to the fundamentals of a software development project, right? I think, is it Karen? Someone mentioned risk. So normally the standard practice in most of this project is that there's a risk register, right? These sort of things are recorded in the risk register, whether there's a scale or, you know, a risk assessment scale to say 1 to 5, it's high risk or not. Then that depends with the project steering committee. So I think standard practice, this will be recorded as a risk, and then decisions will be made by the project management team.
Okay. So the bottom line is that you are for them or against? I mean, are you supportive of their decision to withhold? Or
no, it has to be disclosed even as just as a risk.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. It has to be whether it's escalated and decisions has to be made. That will probably, because we're looking at project level here, right? Software development projects.
Yeah.
Then decisions has to be made by the project team how they're going to deal with that.
Yeah.
Which is quite standard.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Anastasia. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that it's not the risk that they will need to raise. It's probably going to be a control break, an issue that led to a control break, and then they will have to assess the risk according to that control break. But yeah, I agree. And they would have. I was also wondering if they have some kind of agreement as well, like some kind of contractual agreement and an SLA. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's the right place to bring it, but nobody brought it up yet. And most agreements will cover something about vulnerability disclosures, and will have some kind of a time limit of when you can disclose or should disclose something. So I would imagine there is one, considering they're working with financial institutions to analyze high-value transactions for hundreds of clients. Yeah, so I would say ethically, not ethically, put it in the contract.
I think that was King Halo who brought that up. I think he believed that I mean that there should be some contract, and in that contract it should be clearly stated that if there's any flaw in the software, it should be reported. But this case study does not explicitly say that. So yeah, so if you want to make the argument stronger, that that actually you can convict, I mean, you can implicate this company, then I think you can introduce a contract here with the
and not just disclosing it in general, but actually having a time limit for it, you know, of how quickly they need to disclose it and how quickly they need to mitigate that as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone. I think even though we only touched the task 3, but I think we mentioned a lot on the laws here, which is covered in task 1, and something about the privacy and GDPR as well, and how it affects the decision. But yeah, so thanks so much for such a fruitful discussion, and I learned a lot from like different experience and different information that I gathered from the chat, and yeah. So I think we're out of time, but thanks again, and you are free to think more about this task if you like, and then let me know if you have any question. And I will see you guys next week. Then have fun with the rest of the week. Okay.
Thanks, Son.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Son.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks all. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.